Hello, and welcome to Just Therapist Things, where we talk all things therapy. My name is Jordan, and I am an associate marriage and family therapist from Southern California. I currently work in a private practice where we focus on child anxiety reduction, and I also do some work for a nonprofit cancer support organization. Welcome, Chloe. You are the first guest ever on Just Therapist Things. How does it feel?
I feel very honored to be here as the original guest on this amazing podcast.
Great. Well, I'm so happy to have you on to share what it is like to be a school counselor, what kids are facing these days, and to give insight to anyone thinking of entering this field. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
So we both work with children and adolescents, but in different capacities. So while I see kids individually for 50 minutes or so a week, you are with them every day for 7-ish hours a day. And you also see children and adolescents firsthand in their academic and social settings. I'm so excited to dive deeper into what it is like to be a school counselor and hear more about you. So first off, can you share a bit about yourself?
Yes, so I am from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, born and raised, and then I went to college down in Tampa, Florida, went back and got my master's in New York City, and now I'm back in St. Petersburg, Florida. I live by the beach, and I often am with my dog, Shark, hanging out.
Amazing. Love that. Great. So how long have you been working in a school? And you said that you got your master's. So can you tell a little bit about what the master's was in?
Yeah, so I got my undergrad in psychology. And so I went to grad school to get my school counseling degree, which is a Master of Arts. So I was there. I interned at a high school and a middle school. And then when I moved back down to Florida, I got hired at a middle school. And I've been to 3 different middle schools since. Well, I'm currently at my 3rd middle school.
Got it. Okay, great. Wow. So you're very experienced, have a lot of schooling in the education system and have worked in schools for a while, it sounds like.
Yes. And I actually just recently got my master's in educational leadership, which would allow me to become an assistant principal, or I can work at the district level or even in like a higher ed setting.
Wow, that is amazing. Well, congratulations on both of your masters.
Thank you.
So where did your interest come in being a school counselor or just working in the school system?
I've always wanted to work with kids. I actually originally started off in college as an elementary education teacher major. And I was like, I'm not cut out for this daily teaching life. But I still wanted to work with kids, and I still wanted to work in the education system just because I feel like every day is something different. It's not, you come to work, you sit at a desk all day and then you leave. But I'm constantly running around. I'm on my feet all day. And just being in education allows you to see so many different types of people and disabilities and mental illnesses and stuff. So I kind of got to use everything that I had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. That is great. So what age groups are you working with now? And it sounds like you've worked with a lot of different age groups in the past as well.
Yeah, so I worked in elementary, middle, and high school, but I worked full-time the most in middle school, which is in Florida, it's grades 6th, 7th, and 8th. And ages range usually from 11 to 15, depending on the student.
Mm-hmm. Wow, middle school must be really tough. I mean, I remember my middle school days and it was just, not the greatest time in my life for sure. There's, a lot of hormones, puberty, a lot of, everything feels like the end of the world. So I'm sure that's really difficult sometimes to work with middle schoolers.
Yeah, it's a lot of in one ear and out the other conversations. But I do agree with you. Middle school is definitely hard. But a lot of students who know the right resources to utilize at school are doing much better. And I don't remember having that growing up. I don't remember even having a school counselor. So, I think now with, how many positions there are in education and how many resources there are, students are starting off much better than they had been in the past.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. That is amazing. Yeah, and we'll definitely get into that a little bit more, just, the mental health challenges facing kids, but that's really great to hear that they're making use of all the resources.
Yes, definitely. So
what does your day-to-day look like?
That's a good question because it depends on the day. For the most part, I mean, there's a bell schedule. It's pretty set. Come in the morning, do breakfast duty, and then once the bell rings, the kids go to class. We have 7 periods a day, so every about 48 minutes, the bell rings, and we have to come out and supervise the students while they're moving from class to class. Because I currently work in a school with 1,200 kids. My previous middle school they're up to about 2,100 right now. So there's just constant movement on campus and everything like that. So while they're in classes, I'll either meet with parents, I'll meet with students, I'll meet with other staff members, doing scheduling. I mean, there's literally anything that comes up discipline-wise, I'm dealing with. Lunch duty, and then, of course, dismissal duty at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So every day is different. And some days are considered slow, which means that there aren't fights going on, there aren't big crises going on. But even those days that are considered slow are still like I'm running around with my head chopped off.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like you do so much just throughout the whole day.
Yeah, it's a lot. My Apple Watch is used very much, and lots of steps are being put in.
Yeah, definitely. So when you have your office time, when you're not at dismissal or anything like that, then do you have kids who come in to see you regularly? Like on Thursdays at, 9 a.m., Joe comes in? Or is it more of just a walk-in whenever they need you?
Walk-in as needed basis. There are some students that I see more frequently, but it's not like we have like a set appointment time or anything like that. It's pretty much whenever they need me, they can either come see me or tell me in the hallway or during lunch, like, hey, can you call me down later? And I'll call them down to talk to them. The only students that are actually like scheduled are students who require counseling with their IEP. Which is built into their IEP plan. So those students I might see weekly or I might see monthly or just like as needed check-in basis.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. And so when you see kids, do you see them during like lunch breaks or recess? Do you pull them out of class? How does that work?
Supposed to be only like during electives or during PE or during lunch, but since the school is such a high population and we are a Title I school, which means that we have a lot of low-income families and a lot of students with very traumatic backgrounds, I pretty much just see them whenever either I'm available or they're available to speak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense. Do you find that kids ever come in to see you just because they want to miss math class or something like that?
Yes, all the time.
Yeah.
My office, I have fidgets all over the place. It's a very calming place. So a lot of the times, a kid will come up to you in the morning and be like, Miss Gerbec, can I please talk to you during 6th period? I'm like, well, if you really needed to talk to me, you could talk to me at any time. So it's kind of, if you're picking a specific class to come talk to you in, I'm usually like, no, I'm just going to call you down when I'm available because I don't want to make them miss a class that they don't want to be in.
Right. Yes, understandable. I'm sure I would be guilty of doing that too. I'd be like, can I come see you during history class?
Yeah, exactly. Or like, I have a math test today. I think I need to go talk to the counselor.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, that must be hard to kind of gauge, when kids actually need to see you and when they don't. But it seems like you have it down.
Yeah, it's definitely something that you learn over time because I would say my first year in middle school, I was deceived all year. And I realized, like, okay, these kids are pulling fast ones on me. So I had to kind of learn the tricks of the trade almost. Yeah.
Wow. So how many kids would you say you have on your caseload currently?
So we have 3 counselors for 3 grade levels. However, one of the counselors right now has taken a leave of absence. So we have split the 6th grade group of kids. So right now I have about 400 7th graders and then about 200 6th graders, I would say, rough estimate.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a lot. My old school was even bigger. My grade level had almost 700 kids in it. And yeah, the only nice part is that we roll with our students. So like I had them in 6th grade, I have them now in 7th grade, and I'll have them again next year in 8th grade. So there's a lot of time to like learn about everybody's backgrounds and learn about their family and learn how students, which student has to stay away from the student. So it does help in that sense that we roll with the students.
Mm-hmm. Right. That makes sense. But I mean, having that many clients, essentially.
Yeah.
I mean,
yep.
How do you keep track of all of them?
Luckily, I was blessed with like a very good memory. So I am pretty good at, like, I would say 80% of the entire school, at least on a first name basis. So there's that. I constantly throw myself in situations so that I can learn more about the students. But because of how many kids there are, unfortunately, the quote unquote good kids, I don't get to see as much because they're not ones that would be in my office or in the office for discipline. So I definitely know the more behavior and academic students than I do like, a regular kid.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Which I've always tried to, at the beginning of the year, I'm like, okay, I'm going to get to know, I'm going to meet with each kid at least, once every 2 weeks. But by the second week of school, that never is able to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. I just cannot imagine. I mean, that blows my mind a little bit just thinking about that because I see 20 clients a week, and that's just, 10 times.
It's a lot. Mm-hmm. I don't think people realize that the people who are not in education or even in mental health understand like what exactly goes on day to day at a school. And I honestly couldn't even put it into words unless you just have to be there to see what really is going on. Mm-hmm. But like, ASCA, which is the American School Counseling Association, they recommend a caseload of 250 per counselor, but obviously that's not being met in many, many, many districts across the country.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Do you feel that, as a school counselor, do you feel like you are just stretched so thin? And how do you prevent burnout and just kind of keep going?
That's a good question. I am stretched very thin, and I don't want to like speak highly of myself or anything, but I do put most of my energy, like my overall energy into school and into work and into the kids. Like I'm constantly staying late. I'm constantly there early. I do a lot on the campus, which, at the end of the day, like when I get home, I do not want to speak to a single person. Like I just need to like come home, do my thing, make dinner, whatever, watch TV. But like my brain is like completely fried. It is nice, I'll be honest, that we do get breaks, even though there's never enough. But we do have, 2 weeks off in December. We have a whole week off for Thanksgiving. We have 2 months off for the summer. So it does help kind of to like reset. But there are stretches of time where there's no breaks off. Like, for example, like today is our last day off until May 26th. So that's going to be like a very long stretch of, I might have to take a day off for myself.
Yeah. Right. I mean, I feel like a lot of people, I mean, myself included, I've thought about you and have thought like, oh, that's so nice. Chloe has a few months off for summer, but I mean, it really is just your day to day and what you deal with is, I mean, I'm sure you're at just a heightened stress level constantly.
Yeah, I mean, it affects everything. Like my appetite. Some days I cannot stop eating. Like all day I'm eating, and then some days I don't eat for like 2 days straight because I'm just like my emotions and my stress level and my cortisol levels or whatever are like literally all over the place. And like because of staffing shortages and everything going on in our district and in America at this time, like we are being stressed even thinner than we already were. So, yeah, something got to change at some point.
Definitely. How do you feel that your pay reflects what you do?
It does not. I had 2 jobs for like my first 2 years working as a school counselor. I worked at a restaurant. And even with that, like I was basically like a paycheck or 2 from having no money at all. So it's like we do so much and we are, dedicating our lives to these kids, and the district is just not paying us what we deserve. And, the union and everything has been fighting to get us raises and stuff. But I mean, even when we get a raise, it's like maybe 7 cents an hour. Like it does nothing to help anybody. And like people have kids, people have, like family members who are sick that they have to take care of them. Like I cannot imagine how people live because I was single, adult, and I don't have any kids or anything. My family members are luckily healthy and I don't have to take care of anybody else, and I can barely afford to live myself. So I don't understand how the, district thinks that people can afford to live like this.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like nationwide, just the school system is so underfunded, and it's been just a topic for, so long now. Like it's been a topic of how do we, make the school system better. And it seems like, I don't know, have you felt like anything has helped over the past few years?
No, if anything, it's getting worse. People are leaving in droves out of education completely. The kids have, at least where I'm located, the generation, like every new incoming grade level we get has even more severe behavior issues and lacking social skills. So we're just like, pouring all our time and energy into them. And then the next year it's going to be even worse. So it's just like I was talking about this yesterday. It's like there should be a national crisis. Like we need to educate children. That at the end of the day, children need to be educated. And so we are not funding the schools. We're creating all these crazy laws that make it impossible to teach. Like people are leaving, but yet at the same time, there's still kids who need to be educated. So why is it this back and forth give and take thing?
Completely. Right. It's so disheartening. It really is. And it's scary for the future.
Yeah, it is disheartening. And I feel bad because the teachers that, are good teachers and are good for the kids and the kids respect them and, they're respectable adults and everything. They're the ones that are leaving because they've had it. I mean, everything's being pushed onto them. Like if you're a good teacher at the school, you get all the behavior issues in your class. Like, there's no sharing the wealth or anything like that. It's like, if you're good at your job, you are the one that is getting almost punished for it because you're good at it. So it's like all those teachers are the ones that are leaving, and we're left with like bottom of the barrel, old teachers who haven't changed their ways in like 30 years, and it's just not helping the kids at all.
Yeah. I think you put it in a really good way. I mean, it should be a national crisis. It really should. And I mean, I feel like it's been that way for so long, but nothing has really helped to fix it. And kind of going off of that, so you work at a school in Florida, and there has been a lot of recent legislation there. I mean, a lot of kind of interesting laws. Don't say gay law, stop woke law, banning books. How have these laws affected the school system and the students?
So luckily, they haven't impacted my district yet. And I say yes because it will happen. But like the Don't Say Gay law came into effect, that only really is geared towards K through third grade. So I'm in a middle school, and luckily it hasn't gotten to that yet. Same with like the Stay Woke law and the banning of the books. It's happening in districts around our district, but it hasn't really affected our district yet. So I don't really have any like firsthand like account of how these laws are affecting students. But I mean, you can just think in 20 years, like imagine how these kids are going to be because of all these crazy laws that are being proposed and these bills. And there's like this whole thing now with you can't talk about menstrual cycles before sixth grade, but most of the students now are getting their periods in fourth grade. So it's like, it's just a bunch of old white men who are deciding, you know, what's best for school districts where most of the population are minorities or low income. So, you know, what they're experiencing as an old white man has nothing of what these kids and these families are experiencing. So it's like they just don't really understand their clientele almost.
Yeah, completely. It's such a skewed perception. And I mean, I guess hopefully like in their minds, they're not saying like, I want to F over the school system. I mean, maybe they're thinking that they're bettering the school system, but it's clearly not. And it's clearly making it harder for students and teachers and school counselors. And I'm sure, I mean, you work at a super big school, so you definitely have a lot of kids who, as you said, are, you know, low socioeconomic status, minority, also in the LGBTQIA plus community, I'm sure. Have you noticed or experienced, I mean, how do kids feel about expressing their gender identities or their sexuality at your school?
We have a pretty big like LGBTQ population. We actually have a GSA, which is a Gay Straight Alliance club that meets in the mornings once a week. But the adult in the room is not allowed to discuss anything with the students. So basically, the only reason the adult is there is for supervision. So, you know, to make sure the kids are safe. But if kids ask them a question that has something to do with like anything LGBTQ related, the teacher is legally not allowed to answer it. And that's because of potential lawsuits and everything like that. We had an issue last year where a kid, you know, came to GSA, was out on campus, known under a different name, you know, was transgender, and their parents were just so against it that they ended up pulling the kid out of the school because they thought that it was the GSA club that was, ruining it for the student. But really, that was a safe place for the student to really be themselves. So there's things like that. Everyone is very walks on eggshells regarding that. We have 2 students who identify as male. One of them actually, they got the court to change their name and everything like that. So now in our systems, they're known as that student, as the male name But even like there was a whole issue last year with them playing sports as a, female to male student. I was literally on the phone with the district the entire day trying to make sure that he was able to play on the boys team and not a girls team. So it's just like case by case basis, but overall, we can't really talk to the students about anything LGBTQ related.
Wow. I mean, that is honestly ridiculous to me because, I mean, these are, at the end of the day, like, these are children and teenagers, and they're growing and developing and learning and, like, still taking in everything from their environment. And sometimes they need guidance from adults. And I mean, it makes sense that, of course, you don't want adults, like, talking about their political views, but that's also the issue in our nation, is that these, LGBTQ rights have become a political issue. So you would,
and
go ahead.
Sorry. I was going to say, like, I had a teacher, at some point in my career come up to me, and because they had two students in their classroom that identified as another gender, come up to me and say, I'm not going to teach these kids, like, it's against my religious belief, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you're literally there to teach them about whatever subject that person was teaching. It has nothing to do with who the student is, their beliefs, your beliefs. Like, your job is literally to teach the students. So teachers have been letting their own personal beliefs, interfere with their actual job.
Yeah, completely.
And it's like, at the end of the day, you're really just hurting the student because maybe you're a better teacher, in that subject, and now that student has to go to a different teacher, and maybe they're not going to get all the material that they needed, or maybe they won't do as well in that class that they could have done in your class because you're too narrow-minded to just even teach the student. We're not asking you to, like, attend a pride parade with them or anything. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, right. So on the one hand, it seems like some teachers and people in the school system are getting too involved and too, that's against my beliefs. But then on the other hand, teachers are prevented from getting involved. And that's even, I mean, something that I'm seeing. And I'm, of course, in Los Angeles. And so, like, very progressive, like, liberal state. But I mean, I still deal with some of my clients who have been driven out of school because, kids are homophobic. Or are dealing with homophobic administration, and teachers can't really do anything to help. I mean, they can only do so much. They can only be there to kind of listen, and, people like you who are great at interacting with kids and, addressing their mental health. But that's really all that teachers and people at the school can do. I mean, there's not really much that can be done at the administrative level.
Right. Yeah. Even some administrators, it's like their hands are tied at the district level and even at the state level. So like these major decisions are being made and we have no input on any of them.
Yeah. So. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot facing the school system today, and kind of one of the most glaring ones, of course, are school shootings and gun violence. And yeah, I mean, it's just awful, absolutely horrific. And one of the highest casualty school shootings in our history was in Florida at Parkland. So what is it like just, day to day going to a school, living in a state where there have been school shootings, and just being in a nation that seems to value guns over children? How has that been?
I'll be completely honest. I am so desensitized to all of it that, like, when there was the shooting a couple weeks ago, I think it was in Colorado, when the student ended up shooting the teacher, like, I'll come home from work and look at, TikTok, Twitter, whatever, and check my version of the news. And it will be like, there's a shooting today. And it's like, oh, okay, another shooting. Cool. like, it's just so, like, it doesn't even affect me in any way anymore because we've just become so almost used to it at this point. I mean, obviously there's been, after starting with the Parkland shooting, luckily now we have a sheriff or a school resource officer in every single school in our district, elementary, middle, and high. So there's always law enforcement on campus. And you know, we have active shooting drills every month. At the beginning of the year, there's a very long teacher active shooter training that we have to go through. But even the kids are so desensitized to it because, like, during the active shooter drills, students are, you know, shouting out, they're goofing around, they're not taking the drill seriously, which, you know, as a middle schooler, I understand it's kind of hard to see, like, the big picture, but it's like the kids are so used to just, okay, guys, it's time to get in the corner. Let's lock the door, you know, let's turn out the lights. And then they sit there in silence, and then it's over, and they move on with their day like nothing ever happened. So, like, if an actual shooter came on campus, I don't even know if the students would even be prepared because they don't take it seriously because we have to do it so often. And, like, when there is a shooting, the students don't really seem affected by it. I don't know if that's because of their age level or just because of the distance, but, you know, when the Parkland shooting happened, I remember my mom being like, so how are the kids? Like, are the kids freaking out? Like, are the kids upset? Are the families upset? And it's like, I was like, it's basically like nothing ever happened. Like, it doesn't affect them in any way.
Oh.
Yeah. So I know that's a lot, but I mean, it's just kind of like the nature of the job. Like, if you're a doctor, you become immune to, like, blood and wounds and stuff like that. It's just, we've become so immune to these school shootings. And, you know, I have been in situations, we did have a gun on our campus. A student brought a gun in their backpack. And even that was, like, almost seen as, like, not like a joke, but it was just, like, we took it so lightly that it wasn't even, like, a serious thing. Like, I don't even remember that as one of my craziest days or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what it's like over here in Florida.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, no, I'm, like, actually shaking because it's just like incomprehensible that this is what our students have to deal with. And parents, I mean, I think about, I want to have kids one day, you know, and I think about, I don't want to, like, live in a world where this is happening. I don't want to send my kids to school every day and be so anxious that something could happen. And I mean, even precautions that take place, like, you know, having a sheriff or I know in LA, like, where I work, it's a big Jewish community. And so there's a lot of Jewish schools. And they have security guards with weapons outside of the school. Mm-hmm. I mean, and even that, like, that affects the kids. I've had multiple kids, I mean, come into my office, and especially after the horrific Texas shooting that happened, you know, I had to address with kids and say, so, you know, I'm sure you've heard what happened. Let's talk about it. And a lot of the kids, as you said, they're kind of desensitized to it. But a lot of them did say, I'm really scared. And, like, I'm scared to go to school. And the security guard that we have in front of the school is on his phone all day, you know, and I don't feel safe even having the security guard here. So it's awful. It really is.
Yeah. And it's sad that the kids can, like, kind of see through that. Like, the fact that they even notice that the security guard is on his phone. Like, kids are so observant. They notice everything. They notice every little change. And, like, I can literally be having, like, a bad day and, like, I'm not constantly, like, smiling and goofy like I normally am. And they're like, Ms. Gerbec, what's wrong? What's wrong? Like, they notice everything. So if they can sense that the adults don't really care about their safety on campus, then of course that's going to heighten their anxiety. Like, well, they don't care, so I'm going to have to, like, protect myself or something like that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's take a break for a second because I'm honestly, like, shaking out of fury and emotion. Thank you so much for sharing just everything that you just shared. I mean, it's so, so important to talk about. So I really appreciate you being so open about all the mess facing the school system. And, you know, hopefully someone out there will listen to this podcast and can create some change. So thank you again. So kind of going off of everything that we just talked about, what would you say are the major issues facing children and adolescents today?
The major issues that are facing adolescents today at my school, mostly anxiety. Test anxiety is a really big one, or even just anything academically motivated. Like, students will do anything they can to not go to class. And I know that is because due to COVID, their reading scores and math scores have dropped like significantly. Like, there's some students in 7th and 8th grade that still can't even read. And they avoid going to class because they don't want, I don't think they're old enough to understand that they don't want to face that, but I think that they do everything that they possibly can to just not be in class. And it's a nationwide issue, the reading and the math scores, but it's also a very big district issue. Our reading scores have always been pretty low compared to others. Like, even my sister, she's 14. She reads and reads and reads all day. Like, she's very academically motivated and driven. But I mean, there's some students that if you gave me a piece of their work, I would think it was for like a first grader or a second grader. So I think that the academic issue is affecting, them as a whole person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. I mean, because academic performance is so tied to mental health and just self-esteem and anxiety and depression and all of that. How do you feel that COVID has affected the students that you see and their just mental health in general?
Well, right now, since we're kind of like 3 years past, the pandemic and everything shutting down, I don't really see any effects from COVID. I just, overall, as a grade level, they are just lacking like social skills. They're lacking conflict resolution skills. They're lacking, like we just talked about, academic skills, and that is then affecting them as a person. And honestly, all the time, I'm scared for you guys as adults because they have no conflict resolution skills. Everything needs to be solved by somebody else. And they really just, need somebody to do everything for them. Like, they have no autonomy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is.
And I don't know if that's because of COVID, because, when we were shut down, there were a lot of parents who were doing the work for their kids and doing, helping, sitting next to them and helping them with their work. And now that they don't have that, it's like they're kind of like being thrown out to the wolves almost, and they have like no idea how to like function as like a normal human being.
Mm-hmm. So some of that may be due to COVID. What do you think the other reasons for that are?
Social media, definitely. Social media is like a huge factor. I mean, the kids are on their phones 24/7. They're on Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, constantly texting each other. And it's like they don't really see the detriment of what it's doing, obviously, to their brains. But also it's like they don't really understand that what they're doing is not like normal social media behavior, which it's kind of hard to describe. But like, they get into these group chats where, they're like, they pull kind of like when we were kids and we would call, another person, and then we would like three-way in somebody and not be so nice to that person, but they were kind of quiet, sitting there quietly, and then at the end we'd be like, surprised that person's on the line. Mm-hmm. The same thing, like they'll pull kids into group chats, and then they'll be so mean to these kids. And like, we had a situation where a student told another student that he should die and he should kill himself and his parents don't love him, and some very more graphic things. And it's like, they don't understand that that's not what the phone is for. It's supposed to be a benefit to you, not something that is like controlling your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow.
And that does, you know, in turn cause a lot of, I mean, even some trauma, but a lot of anxiety. You know, kids are always panicking. Like when we have to confiscate a cell phone from a kid, sometimes I'm like, it's literally like we're asking them to like cut off their arm. Like they get so stressed and so scared of what's going to happen if they don't have their phone with them.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And that's really alarming. So
it really is. Yeah. And probably a huge part of that is just a fear of missing something, because everything happens online now. And that's how, you know, a lot of teenagers and children connect with each other and socialize and see what's, you know, the popular thing in the world. And so I'm sure a lot of that is just the fear of missing that by not having their phone. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. It seems like, I don't know, and tell me what you think about this, but it seems like kids are a lot meaner than they were, or maybe just mean in different ways than maybe when we were that age.
Yeah, I mean, kids will always be mean forever, but I definitely agree that it has changed. Like what they're saying to each other. I mean, these kids talk about things like even sexually that I didn't even know were a thing until I was like in 10th grade. And these are like sixth graders. They talk about, you know, how people look, they call them gay, you know, all that stuff. They like talking about just really, really inappropriate, like adult things that I feel like even middle schoolers shouldn't even know exist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I blame that on their access to social media, because there's no filter. It's not like there's like a kid version of these TikTok videos or Instagram stories or whatever. It's like they're seeing these celebrities, they're seeing these influencers posting these really like inappropriate and like almost egregious stuff, and they're mimicking them, but they're only 12. They're not, you know, 25, and they have their whole frontal lobe created and everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So would you say that the main difficulties that kids come to you for, you mentioned kind of test anxiety and academic stress, or is that what kids most often come to you for?
Yeah, and I do a lot of peer mediation. So like if there's going to be a fight or if there's like issues between mostly girls, we have to like sit down with them and do like almost like a circle to like, you know, get them to, they don't have to be friends is what I tell them, but they just need to be able to coexist in a place where fighting is not the answer, pretty much.
Mm-hmm. Is it physical fighting or verbal fights?
Both. We have both. We have, I would say, luckily we've been in a dry spell of fights, but there was a time when there was almost a fight every single day for about 2 weeks. Wow. And that was back in like December, I want to say.
Oh, wow. Huh.
Yeah. So that's also part of the job, is breaking up fights.
Right. Would you say that the students really connect with you? Do you feel like you have good relationships with them?
Yes, I would say majority of the students, we're great. I try to be as positive as I can. Like I'm a pretty bubbly and goofy person, so I try to keep that way on campus. There are a few students who annoy everything. It takes everything in me to not stoop to their level and argue with them or act like another middle schooler when I speak with them. Mm-hmm. But I would say like 98% of the kids on campus I'm good with.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure you've had some wild stories. Can you share one or a few?
Yes. So there was a student this is my claim to fame as a school counselor. I actually tried to make it on Ellen or, you know, Jimmy Fallon because of this, but there was a student, it was my second year, And I had given him lunch detention because every day he, didn't follow the lunchroom procedures, whatever. So I sent him to lunch detention, and I guess while he was in lunch detention, he was given an assignment to basically, reflect and write, why he got to lunch detention and what he could have done differently, etc. So I got the letter back, and in the letter, he referred to me as Mrs. Crackhead Gerbec, and said that the only way he would be able to change is if I got fired or if I left the school. And that document or that letter has been pinned to my bulletin board for the last 5 years. And I think it's just so funny. And yeah, these kids are crazy. They just say really wild things.
So you said
we also have.
You said Mrs. Crackhead Gerbec. Is that what he called you?
Yes, he said that.
Wow.
Mrs. Crackhead Gerbec. Put him in lunch detention, and the only way for him to change is if I got fired or left the school.
Oh, man. Do you know what that kid is up to now?
I do. I actually luckily have access to every student in the district. So from time to time, I'll go and look at my most treasured kids and kind of see what they're up to. Mm-hmm. And he's doing very well.
That's good.
He's doing well.
That's great.
Yeah. So he's and it was so funny. I couldn't even be mad at it. It's just one of those things that you just end up laughing because it was just so ridiculous.
Right. That should definitely be on Ellen or on Jimmy Fallon. I hope they pick that story up. For sure.
Right? Yeah, maybe one day I'll be famous and can quit my job.
Yeah. Any other wild stories that you want to share?
I guess at my old school we had this day called Bleach Day. And this school, every day was I'm waiting for the Netflix cameras to pop out because there's no way that there's not someone scripting the stuff that goes on at this school because it was just so out of this world and so crazy. So that was the school I was at that at the time had 1,900 students on campus, and they had bleached the district had come and bleached all the sidewalks and the walls and everything, the outside of the building the night before. And the next day we all, all the teachers, we all get to campus and we're why does it smell so much like bleach? And I don't know why, but throughout the day, the bleach smells just started getting crazier and crazier. And so we literally had to keep every single student in their homeroom class for 7 hours while we, escorted kids to the bathroom. We hand delivered, their lunches to the classroom because it was affecting people's ability to breathe. And it was just one of those days, I think I clocked in almost 20,000 steps because I was just running all over the place and the teachers were cracking up. It's just what is God giving us at this school? What more shit can we possibly deal with?
So there was no warning that they were just going to douse the school in bleach.
Yeah, and it was funny because I'm pretty sure the next week or something was spring break, and we were why couldn't they have just waited to do this? But also how much bleach did they really use to clean? Because it was hard to breathe. It was really starting to affect people's lungs and everything.
That is absolutely wild.
Yeah, I just can't. I really wish that I could just walk around with a GoPro and film the stuff that goes on at school because it's just not something that a typical person would think goes on. I didn't even know that this went on until I started working at a school.
Right.
So.
Yeah, you really should make a YouTube channel or write a book or something about just everything you experience.
Yeah, I did. Actually, I started documenting funny things that kids say back when I first started, but there's no time to do anything fun like that. So
right. Wow. So what would you say is the most challenging and the most rewarding part of being a school counselor?
I think challenging is just like this age level, because it's like no matter what you say, what you do, they're going to pretty much do whatever they want anyway. And it's kind of hard to watch sometimes, because it's like, we've been trying to help you so much and like make you make the right choices and help and giving you advice and talk to, your teachers and everything. And then at the end of the day, they still make that very poor decision. And it's like, we know that they can do better. And I think that that's part of, one of the challenging parts of it. Mm-hmm. Rewarding is I just love the kids. The kids are hilarious. The kids are so funny. They really like get to know you. And they ask me all the time, like, about my dog and my girlfriend. And, they just really like, they become like a part of you almost. And, like my first cohort of kids, I had them for 3 years, and I really, really got to know all of them. And like, to this day, like I said, I still kind of look them up to see how they're doing, to see if they are, getting the right credits, if they're doing sports or anything like that. And it's cool to see kids that were making poor decisions during middle school, and they actually like got it together when they got to high school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that is amazing. And I mean, thank God there's people like you in the school system who just have such good rapport with students. And I mean, I'm sure you make such a huge difference in their lives and just help them in so many ways that you probably don't even acknowledge. So,
well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. What would you say to someone who is thinking of being a school counselor?
I would say do it, but you really need to find the right fit of school. It's a really rewarding job. It's a really fun job, and it definitely takes a certain type of person to be able to do it. But if you are not like vibing with your administration, or you're not vibing with the type of student that's at your school, you're not going to be able to be and do like your max potential of who you are. And I'm still trying to look for the exact right fit. Like now that I'm like a seasoned counselor, I know kind of like what to look for when it comes to like an administration and a school. But I mean, there's just so many factors that come into place. But I think if you go into it with a mindset that you're there for the kids at the end of the day, and kind of all the adult BS falls to the wayside, I think that you can, be like a really good asset at the school.
Go.
I would also recommend shadowing at a school, especially like elementary versus middle versus high school, because there's certain people, that would do great in a high school that wouldn't do so well in elementary, and vice versa. So the more you shadow and the more you get a feel for what you like, the better you will be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the happier you'll be.
Yes, absolutely. That is such great advice. Thank you so much for joining me and sharing your experiences and insights. We touched on so many essential topics and ways that we can improve the school system and help school counselors. You were such an awesome first guest, so thank you so much for being here. And
well, thank you for having me. Thank you.
Of course. And maybe we can do another episode in the future.
That would be awesome. And thank your local school counselor.
Yes, absolutely. Thank your local school counselor. Thank you so much for listening to Just Therapist Things and exploring the education system and challenges that children and adolescents are facing these days. Subscribe and follow to catch future episodes. Talk to you soon.